President William Ruto is set to make his maiden State of the Nation address this afternoon before both houses of Parliament. The address, which is enshrined in the Constitution as one of the functions of a head of state, will see the President outline his scorecard and his future agenda. The address comes amid concerns of issues of high cost of living. You have the issue of fuel prices as well as taxation and the depreciation of the value of the Kenyan shilling. NTV's Sydney Chazima now brings us the President's probable entry in the anticipated nation of a State of the Nation address. Let's have a look.
President William Ruto is set to make a return to Parliament buildings a year and close to 2 months after addressing the opening of the 13th Parliament. Article 132 prescribes that a president shall once every year report in an address to the nation on all the measures taken and the progress achieved in the realization of the national values, gazette the details of the measures and progress of the realization of the values, and submit a report for debate to the National Assembly on the progress made in fulfilling the international obligations of the Republic. The President is expected to outline his scorecard. Many Kenyans will be hoping that the head of state will address the high cost of living and the rising cost of fuel. The country's stock of public debt, which currently stands at 10.5 trillion shillings, of which 54% is external, will most likely feature. The government has argued that the increased taxes are a necessity to help clear the debt obligations. In the just tabled supplementary budget, debt service obligations have been increased by 241 billion shillings to 1.8 trillion. Kenya's Eurobond is set to mature in June 2024. The government affirms that the refunding is fully funded. Matters corruption are also set to feature. The president in recent times has been issuing stern warnings to government officers who engage in corrupt practices, affirming his resolve to guard the funds collected from old and new taxes, which are being deemed as burdensome. Some of the most notable actions and sweeping changes made by the Kenya Kwanza regime over corruption allegations have been around the KEMSA Board of Management. Aside from matters corruption within the governance structure, the president is also expected to highlight the changes in cabinet and the structure of various dockets, which are said to be geared towards enhancing service delivery. President Ruto has so far made more than 35 trips abroad, attracting critics and supporters in equal measure. Some who argue that the president has done well to market Kenya across international borders. The government's development plans and the reforms in the education and health sectors and the climate change agenda may also feature on the president's plate. All eyes will be on President William Ruto. Sydney Chazima, NTV.
All right, that just gives us paints for us a picture of what perhaps we expect in the President's address this afternoon. But going back to that particular conversation is that suddenly the issue of the economy does feature quite prominently in that. But also part of that conversation is the issue of government spending. On the last page of the DN, just very quickly, we're going to touch on this. Repayment of debts has bled the country dry, according to Treasury Cabinet Secretary. The state is also facing underlying pressures like the rising cost of living and high taxation. But I'm going to go back to a statement that was made, I believe, a week ago, and revelations that were presented by the Controller of Budget, Margaret Nyakango, before the National Dialogue Committee at the Bomas of Kenya. She talked about issues of what she termed as budgeted corruption and how her salary was actually over-budgeted by 3 times. Let me begin with you, Mheshimiwa Kioni. What does this speak on the government's state of managing the economy when you have the Controller of Budget herself indicting the government on issues of spending?
And she actually said it was not just on her pay alone, her pay packs alone. She actually said it is the case with all state officers. And an officer of government at that level, at the meeting, it's very difficult for you to say anything to the contrary. You can only come with the measures that you put in place. Unfortunately, the CS Treasury, the following day or a week later, came with a written and signed document to say that, to try and dispute or put in dispute what she had claimed. And on leading it, and I remember pointing it out to Eugene Wamarwa, the statement went as follows: that one of what was allocated to her in terms of allowances was something like 7 million shillings last year. It was brought down to 700 at a given point. She spent only 50,000. The amount of money that she is being asked to spend this year, you remember she spent only 50,000 last year. This is a signed document by CS Treasury. The amount of money she is being requested to spend this year is now 7.5 million shillings. She had been given over 7 million, spent only 50, but you are forcing another 7.5 to her. And and it again was another skunk that was thrown in, and it was difficult for the CS to explain. Budgeted corruption is a reality in this country. It is actually, you go, I think the way it's done is that you go out and identify something that needs to be done way in advance. Like now, people must have identified the roads they need to maram in their areas. And when the budget is being done, you force the maraming of that into the budget. And because you've been working through it, eventually you are awarded that contract at the same amount of money. That's the budgeting of corruption that is there. It is a reality. And if corruption is not handled in this country, we cannot deal with the issues of debt repayment and the rest. Remember, even when you talk about members of parliament, I'm told, or we saw you report, were in State House 2 days ago, talking about the cost of living. But the only reason why it was on the agenda is because it's making them unpopular. It's not because Kenyans needs to be helped to put a meal on their table. It's because this thing is making us very unpopular on the ground. I mean, when you see that warped thinking, it is actually, it also informs the headline on the Star, which is again saying that they want to bypass Salaries Remuneration Commission for purposes of increasing their packs. We have sat for almost 70 days, heading to 80 days at Boma's place. The cost of living is an issue that has come, is like a hit and miss. It's been difficult to bring it to the table. But when it comes to the table, we have heard from the government and institutions, experts from the field, and deliberate, some very costly measures will have to be taken and put in place for us to be able to address the cost of living in this country. You've talked about the issue of the debt. I said, by today, you can actually see how much money is being borrowed by the end of October, November. It's there, it's available. But I remember Kenya was saying, and that time we were in parliament with the Mheshimiwa governor. Kenya came and told us in parliament or in a parliamentary committee, I cannot remember the sitting, but he stand us by saying, if you do not borrow, you are a very poor. You don't develop by using your own money. You develop by using money borrowed, but borrow it and use it properly. That is very, very crucial. It is borrowing. They are going to borrow. They will continue borrowing, but the kind of borrowing that needs to be done again needs to be managed. And also, are there projects that needs to be listed? Are there things we wanted done which we have to postpone their doing until much later when you are able to bring some balance in our budgeting? These are decisions that must be arrived at, and they are not painful. But remember, when we are doing that, you don't allow a Kenyan to sleep hungry. That's the minimum. It doesn't matter how much it costs you. You don't allow a Kenyan to sleep hungry. And you also cannot take away the bursary or the subsidizing of education. There are things you must compromise, however expensive they will be to the budget.
How do you think the president is going to balance? He had promises to Kenyans that he made during the campaigns. He needs the money to make these promises a reality. But at the same time, of course, the issue of the debt really making the economy bleed to this point.
He mentioned it. He has to bite the bullet. Come and tell Kenyans, I did not know what I was saying when I was campaigning. He almost said it the other day when he was in the church, when he said that it has come to his realization that when your promises are not fulfilled immediately, you wake up the following day.
But isn't it because of the current situation that is certainly a reality to many Kenyans that things are not as good as
it is because of not agreeing that we were going through a very difficult patch with the COVID, that the Russia team was a problem to this country. We needed to start from accepting that we are in a difficult situation. That needs all of us as leaders to come on board to make sure that we manage it. But for as long as you have a shareholding approach, you are going to be left alone to swim around in this thing. And it is a problem of your own choice. This is not one of the things we were saying when you were out there, and I don't want to go back to the campaigning thing in Azimio, is that there is an issue of continuity. You do not come and say that you can throw anything away. You must continue from where others left. And you can never continue saying they did it wrongly. It is your chowdy. You are now in praise. Sort it out.
All right.
Your mess.
Mheshimiwa Ruto, now that, yes, we have a new regime. The president has been in office more than a year now and 2 months, I believe. But now you talked about, in fact, yes, taking the bull by the horns, right?
Yes.
Do you think the policies that are currently in place is going to achieve a turnaround on our economy? Because Kenyans are struggling in reality.
Yes, first, the most important thing is that we must stay alive, like Kioni has just mentioned. You must have food on the table. And you must continue doing the things that must be done. And there has to be money to do it. Now, that calls for several things. One, first of all, why even having that shortage? The shortage has been caused essentially by ourselves. Maybe wrong priorities, and then failure to do certain things that ought to have been done.
Right.
Like, for example, there should be no question of importing food for Kenya. Why should we be importing food? The moment we start importing food means the same money is competing again. Is required to import food, is required to import what must be imported, fuel. And you must use the same money to pay for the debts because you built infrastructure. My friend here has mentioned clearly that Kinyua explained, and that is normal in economics, that look, you don't develop by imagining that you are going to create your own capital. Most of the African countries were said to be poor because they are poor. Because you are poor, you are in a vicious circle of poverty. You have nothing to invest, and because you have nothing to invest, you've got nothing to get, and because you've got nothing to get, you are remain poor. So you are poor because you are poor. You cannot invest. So for you to get an injection to get up to get out of this vicious circle of poverty, you must get an injection of capital, and that comes through borrowing. Now, infrastructure is one area you cannot really depend on local funding for. You will have to get some support elsewhere. And without infrastructure, the economy can't quite grow. You need that infrastructure for the economy to progress. So the point here is we have borrowed. Maybe the argument at that time was, do we start with the main railway line going all the way to Malaba or Kisumu, or do we start with the metro in Nairobi? But the point here is you must do something, and you will do it incrementally. So the fact that the government has found the railway line having started, it can only continue from Naivasha. It has to move on. You can't stop it because it has to go on. And I don't think there is intention to stop it. I'm not privy much to what's happening in the Ministry of Infrastructure, but the point here is you cannot stop what has been happening. But the most important thing to start with was to bring the food to the table. We must stop importing maize. We must stop importing wheat. We must stop importing milk. And I don't know whether milk from Uganda is still flowing in. I can see the price of milk is going down. The point here is we should have food first on the table. And then now, what we must import, we get ready to face it. There is one area we've done well. We have to revive agriculture, tourism. And to revive tourism, it requires a concerted effort by all Kenyans. Because, for instance, if we wake up with a culture of we do elections and then we do violence, then obviously you can't revive tourism in another 2 years before you start your election and then violence. The people will run away, and you go to Mombasa and you find the place is empty. All the tourists are now in Tanzania looking at our own animals, which move from Kenya to Tanzania. And you find people, tourists going to deserts like Dubai, instead of coming here and enjoy it, because we have developed a culture of violence. If we can stop this type of culture of violence, that we do election and the next day we are busy on the job, then I think things will move.
But is that,
so we must address the question of even our own discipline. If we really want to grow, then we got to take head on some of the issues that make us poor.
But is that the reason why we find ourselves in the situation we are right now, where
Yes.
the Kenya Kwanza government rode on the promise of lowering the cost of living for Kenyans, making things easier for Kenyans, but that is not exactly what Kenyans really have seen.
And lowering the cost of living in what manner? You are not going to print money Idi Amin style. No, you cannot lower cost of living by that. You can only bring tangible produce. So you have got to start with the right things. Start with agriculture. That is even my own view. You must have local productivity. Our manufacturing is long gone asleep. But the most important areas that used to give us money, and they still do, tea, coffee, there is some activity in that sector. Tea isn't badly off now. Some activity is happening on coffee. But the most important other thing, tourism, is the one that has completely slumped. And then exports. We are now importing from Tanzania. We are even importing from Uganda our own food for us to eat. The most important thing to lower cost of living is to address the question of food. Then now the question of continuous growth. We must still grow. We cannot stagnate. When you talk about certain investments, they still have to be done. So borrowing must continue. You can't run away from that. But it must be measured. And that is why at some point earlier on in 2013, and I think we were with Kioni in Parliament, we were insisting that moving forward, we wanted to include in the Constitution the fact that when you are borrowing, there has to be an intergovernmental, the two levels of government had to develop the, what we are calling Loans and Grants Council. Loans and Grants Council. That really ought to interrogate, without taking over the responsibility of priorities from whoever gets elected as the chief executive of this country. But the nation has to discuss the key priorities that have to go on borrowing, because borrowing will be a fast charge on the consolidated fund. So when you talk about reducing cost of living, it doesn't mean you remove taxation. Taxation is for us to be able to foot our bills. We cannot have our cake and eat it. You can't say you remove the budget and then you start telling us you must bring, you remove the taxes and then you must have education. You can't say you remove the taxation and you must do the roads.
But is there value for the taxes that, you know, the government is collecting from Kenyans? Because there's been a huge issue on even how the government is spending itself. Kenyans have been told, tighten your belts. But
Yes.
is the government tightening its belt?
Well, then we'll have to interrogate the entire budget as to what it is, and that's why there is public participation.
Right.
Where is this money meant to go? Let us then interrogate each line item. Where is it going? And if we can't tell where it is going, then we now start saying, well, then why are you taxing this one? But as of as it is, obviously it's easy to complain. But now when you are on the job and you are supposed to fix it, how do you fix it? Take it as a household. As the head of the household, you've got to tell the rest that this is the situation as it is. We've got to do this, do that, reduce on this expenditure. We've got to increase productivity elsewhere so that you then balance your budget. As a country, we can't run away from taxation however high. There are periods where we say we tighten our belts for about 3 years or 4 years, and then things will then ease. But if you refuse to face it, it would be worse. if the president took over and started doing what he was saying, that you must reduce taxes, how would you now face the challenges of paying these debts as it is and continue to pay the huge public service bill?
Yes, Mheshimiwa Kioni.
I don't want to, but I think one of the other things he needed to do is to have stayed in government when he had an opportunity to be there for 10 years, to understand that the promises he was making to Kenyans were fake. Because he would have known that you can't reduce taxes. That's he can't get away with that.
Yeah.
But I totally want to agree with him. Even as we do away with the culture of violence, we have also to do away with the culture of stealing votes and then coming to steal from our consolidated fund. Yeah. That's another culture that, in fact, we must do away with this culture first of stealing votes, because violence is as a result of people not having any conviction that there was any voting that took place. But the worst is when you have stolen votes and then you have come to steal from our consolidated fund. The controller of budget again said that yes, she can see the borrowing, but even as she is being requested to make payments, she is not able to trace the borrowed money to a project that has been achieved or completed on the ground. That is stealing from the consolidated fund. We must tax and we must borrow. We've been told by even interns in economic classes that the worst that you can do is to borrow money locally from our banks, because you take away the money that was available to a person who wanted to buy a matatu, to bring in a mutuba, to construct a small housing. You take away that ability for the ordinary Kenyan to borrow money at affordable rate, who to then help us spur the economy. But when you as a government, you come and borrow, every bank would want to give you money because they have more certainty in your ability to pay. And then the borrowing is at a very high interest rate, which makes it impossible for anybody else who wanted to borrow from that market. This is one of the things that we have got wrong in the last 1 year. And when William said that he is a student of Kibaki, you can actually see then he was not paying attention even when he was in that class, because he's done exactly the opposite of what Kibaki did. Kibaki found us with a negative economic growth. But he just, within a period of 1 or 2, 3 years, people are saying Kibaki aliweka pesa kwa mifuko yao. They need to interrogate how is it that that kind of thing was done.
Perhaps we need to give him also 1 or 2 years?
Within 3 years, he remained, he tried. You remember we had even a budget surplus of 1 billion shillings in 3 years. 1 billion shillings.
Then perhaps we also need to perhaps give the president another two years?
Well, unfortunately, that's why I'm saying it's a serious blunder, because 2 years, the term will be over, and I'm sure the Kenyans will not try to make this, pata potea approach to voting again. But this is a serious thing. When you talk about taxation, I agree you must tax. But again, he told us when he was a governor that you cannot tax people, poor people, and think that you can grow the economy on taxing a poor person. Today, and this is going to impact on us very negatively in terms of security. Yesterday, government services, an increase in government services was gazetted. And one of the simple examples is an ID card. You lose an ID card, instead of the amount of money you are paying, I think 500 or 100 to 500 shillings, now you have to pay 2,000 shillings. How many Kenyans are going to walk in these streets again without ID cards? How many Kenyans are going to lose services, including banking services, because they have no IDs? How many Kenyans are going to be able to ever transact with M-Pesa again because they have no IDs? 2,000 shillings is a figure that is way beyond the affordability levels of Kenyans. I've talked about M-Pesa. You and I are happy today because you can take your phone and pay your workers, if you have a rural home, workers in the chambers, and through M-Pesa. What has happened is now been used as a way of taxing you. Today, ask how many Nairobians have done away with the pay bill. I know of a building which is 7 stories. People just decided one day to hell with the pay bill, and they removed all of them. They are now saying lipa sisi cash. What happened after that?
That's tax evasion.
Yes, and it is as a result of being overtaxed. The dangers of being too overbearing on any area. The balance is a very important thing. It's a very crucial thing. It's what you must do, because you cannot go alone. You must go with Kenyans. When you again allow money to start having its way in our tills, thefts like it happened with Quickmart, because thieves know at the end of the day we have seen you doing transaction. Hii pesa iko kwa ofisi yako. They will start coming again. We saw it in Quickmart. I'm not saying it's a direct, but it is a reason.
So
100 million shillings was not money that was available at the end of the day in many of these places that you do this, because it is available through other forms of transactions.
So from you see your perspective, do we need to sort of then review a tax structure?
Is this review, or you know what also
an overhaul?
What missed us, not even amazing is a very kind word to use on what I received from the NADOC. When the CS Treasury comes and says they are now taking a study of the tax measures that they put in, how do you start taxing us without having done a study? You tax us and then you want to study the adverse effects. This whole taxation system must be overhauled, otherwise we are headed the wrong direction. Na hii kitu itakuwa mwosho moja kwa hawa ambao wako kwa serikali sasa hivi.
I want to some extent,
and as you agree with me, let me one sentence.
Yeah.
Fertilizer subsidy. We were together with you when Kibaki tried this. It is not going to be a solution. It's a very temporary thing, but we are here to see.
Production
subsidy. But productivity, right. it is something we are willing to pay. You've got to pay input so that you can get an output. But taxation here is something we cannot run. No country survives without taxation. There is no way. The most important thing is for Kenyans to know what is this tax meant to do. And you've got a risk here that if you don't spend, if government does not spend locally, then the economy shrinks. We were in Parliament with my friend Kioni when we pushed Uhuru Kenyatta when he had just been appointed as the minister. We forced him into this thing called economic stimulus. When we said we now don't want to listen to the stories, we don't want to hear the economic verbiage.
And I think you used the same words then. He actually said we don't want these stories.
Right.
We want something being done in
the want something tangible.
We didn't want to hear any more English. We had listened to that in our economics classes at the university. But we now wanted to see results. We didn't want to be told more about indices of growth and all those things without us seeing actual spending at the constituencies. And we were able to influence the carer money going into the constituencies. Yes. We actually forced it. The money didn't go to carer, to the constituencies, other than that particular instance when we walked from Parliament to the finance ministry. It was myself, Kioni, Kina Mili Odhiambo, Shabesh, Mungatana, and a number of MPs, about 19. And we told him, we are going to shoot. You will be the first minister. We are going to reject your budget. We went there to two things. We told him we have come to congratulate you for being appointed Minister for Finance. The second thing, we've come to with bad news, that we are going to reject your budget. And the reason we were telling him, unless we know what is going to be funded in our constituencies. And he actually came up with, he gave us the road fund, and he built schools. He gave us money for primary schools, secondary schools, dispensaries, and he said this will go to the constituency. Then we told him, we will be asleep when you are reading, but we will be clapping. Tutakuwa nagonga chini. Tukisikia tu nasema ukitaka maji tunaleta. All we want to see is there money being spent at the constituency level. So I think that is the thing. We want to see government spending at the lower levels, and the money should be spent in a spread manner, so that the economic growth can be seen. If the taxes that we are now collecting now goes to the counties, go to other projects, and little borrowing at the local level, like Kioni said, that's an economic sense. You don't crowd the local investors out of the banks. So that when you go to the bank, you want an overdraft, you can't get it because they have used the money to buy treasury bills. No, government borrows externally. Local Kenyans borrow locally. Domestic. But we must teach Kenyans that borrowing is something you can only do if you want to progress. If you don't want to progress, run away from loans. The trick with the loans is pay, borrow, and pay. So Kenyans borrowed, we have to pay the loans. Now the president must take that clearly, that he has to continue paying. He must borrow, but spend wisely. And the taxes that we give, we want that money to be spent locally, not outside.
So do you think the spending part is an issue? Don't you see
important.
there's an issue there?
It's
when
important
you're talking about that
the
spending part? Because if you're saying borrowing is good, let me just quote what the Treasury CS had said. So the country is beset by cash flow challenges due to payment of maturing debts, delaying disbursement of funds to development projects, according to the CS. He told the National Assembly Finance and National Planning Committee that the country is in a dire strait. When he says, and I quote, "We have been pushed to a difficult financial position by short-term debt repayment, high interest rates and the depreciation of the shilling, which has increased our expenditure by 145 billion shillings. And however, he said that we are not facing an insolvency crisis. However, we are in a dire situation.
Yes,
but that part of the expenditure, that's a big issue.
It's a big issue, and that is why they have no option but to come up with policies that address that particular matter. It will not be enough for the Minister for Finance to tell us we are in a dire situation without giving us the measures he's putting in place. He cannot be a harbinger of bad news and not telling us so, and what is the good news, what are you doing about it? The same sentence, he should be telling us, therefore bear with us on the taxation, we'll spend your money prudently, but we'll continue to pay. And he cannot tell us, we cannot do away with those loans, so we cannot continue crying over whether we should pay the loans or not. We must pay the loans. They will be paid. It does not matter who. What is also being borrowed by this current government will be paid by another government that will come, even if it is 15 years from now. They will still have to pay. So the point here is Kenyans need to understand that the money was borrowed and what was it used for. I'm surprised if the controller of budget would tell us that she doesn't know what is happening. Then what is she doing? There is no money that passes through her hand that is not supposed to be known where it is going. And no money in Kenya is spent without going through the hands of the controller of budget. The controller of budget must sign off, and there must be a procurement plan. There must be a clear annual development plan for that particular expenditure. If she is releasing money to any particular government arm, agency, it must be for a very clear purpose. And if she tells us the money is overestimated, then what is her job? She's the controller of the budget. We want to see results on our desk. I don't think anybody has taken a gun and told her, now pass this, I want 7 million to myself. I don't think that would happen. So I think we want more to hear about the measures to be put. We can even be told, instead of having your cup of tea full on your mug, this year you will have a half, but in the next 3 years it will be full again. That's okay. We should be told that we are on rough waters. When you go on a plane, you are told in another 30 minutes it will be rough ride, and then it will be smooth. So we need now the good news. The hard times are there. Now, when will the good news start?
But the
is it 3 years from now?
But is the good news coming soon? I mean, we're already hearing what, 300 shillings per litre for what, petroleum products? That's fuel in what?
It could be part of the. It could be part of the good news, depending on how you defend.
How could that be good news? 300 per litre of
it's
fuel?
very important because I saw this again before, because we have had an opportunity of engaging these policymakers one-on-one. A rare opportunity at Bomas, and we left the hall saying the same thing. How can the people we depend on just come and spell doom to us? You cannot be a doomsayer, and all Kenyans are looking upon you to give hope. The thing that can help us move from where we are to the next level is one, hope. Give us hope. Tell us you have the confidence of getting us from where we are. I agree the money that they are borrowing will have to be paid. What I don't agree is in 15 years' time. I see them, another team must be preparing to come in 5 years' time. In actually 3 years' time and some 8 months to take over this. But 2, 3 very crucial things. One, confidence. Investors must have confidence in your ability to get us to the next level. And unless we have that confidence, the 6,000 investors who left this country by the end of the 9th month and went to Tanzania, Uganda, another 6,000 will leave in the coming year. These people in government must give us confidence that they know what they are doing. When we see two CSs at the airport having two briefing sessions on the same problem, there is confusion. It does not help in building confidence. When you see the CS industry taking up time to write for us, the people who we should not lose confidence in, Kuria, that's confusion. It's a system that's not working. The impeachment of Kawila doesn't help us when you see those kind of things. How much money was spent to come up to the level where she was now at the Senate level, and time in accounting. When you all these are indicators of people who are not quite clear as where they want to go next. Confidence is very important. Kenyans do not have confidence, and even foreign investors do not have confidence with this system of governance, and they need to address it. I hope William will be able to address that today. And number two, okay, so that I allow you. Stability within the political sphere is crucial. Our confidence with the people who are in Parliament and the Senate is a minimum. Hear what Isaac said. We walked from Parliament to Treasury Building to confront Uhuru that time. He was in ODM. We were in PNU. But we went and told him, wash up. Today, what are these people in the regime engaged in? Dismantling Jubilee, taking it away, taking ODM away, in confusing members of Parliament. If they have no independence of mind, this country cannot be stable. That political instability that has been introduced in the political parties will eat into the economic stability that we are seeing. There are some basic things that you do not need to go to school. You only need to have observed what others have said. This is where we were.
You're saying from where you sit, there is no confidence in the leadership?
An opportunity is granted every other time.
All right.
By the constitution, like today, is an opportunity for him to say that, yes, we are here, we are going this way, in a manner that is seen. We must see, before you give it back to him. When Wetangula is the Speaker of the National Assembly, and he's also the leader, political party leader of Ford Kenya, a party that is sitting in the same house, what confidence can you get from that institution? When he is the one, actively involved in dismantling political parties that are very useful to his functioning and his scorecard. I mean, these are some of the things that tells you.
But from my understanding, for example, okay, let's hear from Mheshimiwa. But also, yes. But from my understanding, I know that the Speaker relinquished his position as party leader, right?
Yeah. He was in my constituency.
Okay.
In my constituency, in a Catholic church, a place called the Shaupondo, 2 weeks ago. Full Galia as a Ford Kenya, and introduced as the party leader. In my own constituency.
Okay.
So leave and speak and leave the same thing you're saying.
Let's hear from
we have discussed the issues around the economy.
Right.
And my friend has brought in the question of confidence on the country. The confidence on the country is about Kenya. And there is one thing we must fix. For investors to have confidence in us, for tourists to come to Kenya, we must fix our manners, our behavior during and after elections. This has been the biggest problem that has destroyed tourism and has destroyed investment. Because almost all the whole world knows after every elections we will be fighting. Either we are in the streets or we are actually in the bushes. For a whole year we will waste doing things that we ought not to be doing. And a year to the elections we are back to the same thing. We have got to fix our manners. Why don't we accept elections as soon as they are announced? Well, there will never be any... Of course, there are questions of perfecting our electoral process. Why don't we continue to perfect the electoral process? But now, let us fix our manners. Because who will want to invest in Kenya if after every elections we will be on the streets burning cars and throwing stones at ourselves? And
so you're talking about political hygiene.
Yes. Can we sort out the political hygiene? Let us discuss. I'm happy about there is some progress because tribalism seems to be fading. And I think it's because of the counties taking responsibility of economic activity in their own area. There is less pronunciation on tribalism as we move forward. Why don't you let all these things become part of the past? We now start with a new culture of behaving well so that our economy can grow. Because we can't grow food. We are no longer manufacturing because there are no investors. We have no tourists coming here, no more attracting investment. And then we start crying, how are we going to get out of where we are? We are where we are because of our own behavior. But we know the solutions. We've got the solutions. We've got enough intellectuals to handle these issues.
Actually, we only need you.
Yeah?
In some of these places.
I think all we need is to fix ourselves. And then the country can move. Kenya was ahead. Look at what has happened in other countries who are with us at independence.
Yeah,
countries like Singapore, they are nowhere near us. They are clouds away. Even Dubai, which was getting food support from Somalia when Siad Barre was in power, is now way ahead of the rest of us. It's one of the first-class countries now.
But when you talk about investors shunning away from coming into the country to invest, I mean, there are many factors that come into play, not just the issue of political stability in the country, but then still the issue of the economic situation on the ground itself. Is it inspiring to investors?
Yeah, I mean, what is required is basically a population, a market. All you need is a market, and then invest, and stability on policies. And then security is the most important thing.
Do those policies align to what investors are looking for?
Yes, and policies will also happen. First of all, the environment must be right, first and foremost. There should be no chaos, and there should be no stealing in Nairobi. I should not wake up and find I'm faced by a thug. I can see a lot of Kenyans are afraid of walking in town now because border guys will come and
and they drive from all sides of the roads.
Yes.
So
now where are we? I think we need to fix these ones fast. But the most important thing is us, the leaders. Why don't we have some political hygiene sorted out so that then we move? Because what are we quarreling about after the elections? Let us just agree and let everything be transparent.
Isn't that just part of democracy? Yes, Bwana Kioni.
You know, again, Isaac Ruto, this one, played a key role in our 2010 constitution. And it took very serious, even street fighting demonstrations between ODM and PNU. He was in ODM, the demonstrating wing then. And we got ourselves the 2010 constitution. And in the constitution, we actually provided an article for us to demonstrate and picket in a known manner, in a defined manner. We will have to address ourselves as to why do they become chaotic. That's why we are sitting at Bomas. What we also did not provide in the constitution is the stealing of votes. So their demonstrating then produced a constitution that allowed us to demonstrate and picket in a manner that is helped by the police, not resisted by the police. What we never provided in the constitution is the stealing of votes and also stealing from the budget in a budgeted, budgeting for corruption. That's not in the constitution. So as we talk, we also did not provide in the constitution this political prostitution that we are actually seeing within parliament this time round. These are issues that are not in the constitution, and we need to bring our political hygiene, political good manners to that level, where we now allow the country to function as it should. And remember, leadership is not a simple thing. It's not a gift. It requires character. When Uhuru got in 2017, and there was still contestation on his win, what did he do? He took the moral high ground, went over and looked for Raila's hand. That handshake, instead of demonstration, and we are not interested with the handshake because there are many evils that we cannot be associated with now. We hope we sort them out in Bomas the coming few days. That handshake gave us stability in the country. It brought confidence. Investors did not flee. They continued investing. tourists started coming in. These are decisions that are made by politicians, and they are political, they are policy oriented, and you must do that as a leader. But you cannot take over, and immediately you are in office, you tell us, by the way, this is a shareholding entity. You who are not shareholders here, take the highway. Those are not indicators of helping this country move on. We are where we are, largely because of the mismanagement by this regime.
But to be fair to the president, who will be addressing different issues to this afternoon, he's said this, and I think he debunked that shareholding statement.
Yes. I agree. Said, he did. I must commend him. But did it have to take him 9 months to debunk it? Did it have to take 9 months to debunk it? Some of those statements that are said, you need to wake up on the spot and tell him they are wrong. By the way, you are saying these are not the issues to be addressed this afternoon. Look at Article 10 of the Constitution. He is supposed to address himself to issues contained in Article 10. And what I've talked about, the issue of dignity, the issue of having respect to the offices, are issues that relate to what we want to hear him speak about this afternoon.
Yes, and then another issue then I think we can focus on, if we just change gears a little bit, is on security in the country as well. There have been concerns. We've seen fresh attacks by Al-Shabaab. We've seen issues of banditry as well. And looking at that, there have been concerns of the policy decision the government is taking in terms of sending some of our troops to a different country to create some stability. That's in Haiti. There are 1,000 police officers under the UN mission. Do you think this is the right direction that the government is intending to undertake? Of course, right now it's still in a court process, but Mheshimiwa Ruto, that particular decision where your Kenyans are saying, look, first protect us, give us the security that we need. We cannot afford to send our police officers somewhere else. Why are we doing this? What do you think of this direction the government is taking?
I think that statement has been clarified often by both the Minister for Internal Security and others, that look, they are being called upon to do an international duty. Kenya is a member of the Committee of Nations. The world is now just one village, one globe. You cannot ignore what is happening in another area, and if you are called upon to do that which you are able to do, you cannot shy away from that, because we are also expecting other countries to assist us where we need that assistance. I don't think 1,000 police officers will deplete our capacity to deal with Al-Shabaab and the others. Remember, this is a special request to Kenya for that particular unique situation. And remember that Kenya has been participating in peacekeeping missions for quite a long time. You remember Bosnia, you remember all the way to West Africa, to Central Africa, to Sudan, Somalia. Kenya has been called upon to do this because our security forces have proven to be quite professional in their job, and we must give accolades to them. And these are institutions we must continue to build. Even their own exposure, the exposure of those police officers in international situations, will continue to help us build both a CV within the United Nations and also to be able to develop capacity at the local level. I don't think there is any serious issue on that. And we will also learn, and Kenyans will understand that look at what is happening then in Haiti. It then means we must also then stop the growth of slums in our other upcoming towns. That's why we need to invest in housing. Because if we continue the type of thing that is in Kibera and Madare, you create subcultures, some new situations where even the institution of the non-security institutions can no longer function. And then eventually it can engulf the whole country, that type of situation. So I think participating in Haiti is quite in order. It is in line with what we've been doing all along. It can't just be wrong now that the police are going to Haiti when our army is still living in Somalia. The rest have been, we've just gone to Central Africa. And these are requests from the international community. We know the rest of the nations, the bigger nations, are dealing with more serious issues in other areas as well. So I think when we are called upon to do our little bit, we have to understand that this is the globe we are all living in, and what happens in those areas will affect us. Look at how the war between Russia and Ukraine has affected us. We didn't even know that Russia and Ukraine were giving a lot of food to the rest of the world, and that we needed peace in that area so that we have reasonable prices of fuel. But now things have changed. And when you are told the price of fuel is going to 300 shillings, it's because of these flash spots. So we must contribute towards stabilizing the globe.
But generally speaking, how do you think the president has handled the security, general security, state of security in the country?
You see, for example, what he promised with the police, to give them an accounting officer, to give them their own budget. I think we are moving in the right direction. You see, if we continue, however small and incremental these improvements are, we are moving in the right direction. We have got to strengthen institutions in this country. We've got to strengthen the security apparatus and give them some level of autonomy to do a professional job as we move on and continue to training them. Look, one institution that has continued to hold the country well, in spite of our own failures in other areas, has been the judiciary. The judiciary have really tried, and it's looked upon internationally as a much better judiciary that's functioning in Africa. And we hope Parliament continues to fund the judiciary so that it becomes much stronger, and then that is one arm that should remain quite strong. The next is the security apparatus. They have remained fairly professional, and we can only develop them in that direction. So I think as we develop our good political hygiene, we should let the other institutions flourish as well. So I'm in support of the institutions that are being supported, the security services, to operate professionally. Let them not be they should not be used to which hand. Yeah.
All right, Mheshimiwa Kioni, on the issue of security, how do you think the president has handled that matter? We've seen some recently attacks, especially in Lamu, northeastern Kenya, because of Al-Shabaab. But generally looking at that security situation, are we doing better?
Let me say, but I agree with my colleague on the issue of the judiciary, because other than the hot air and the wild good chase, and also allowing a few of individuals who are facing corruption charges, who had corruption charges in court, to take over ministerial positions, we have a lot of hope and faith in our judiciary. And it is like the only institution that you can say is still functioning. I hope they can maintain that, they can hold on. And I'm happy to know that he is part of the JSC. If you continue being the person I knew when we were in Bunge, then the judiciary has a good catch this time round. But on the issue of the security, again, we had those demonstrations, but it is good to know that we did complain as Azimio, and ICC came to check on those brutalities. We have the human rights issues that were located on Kenyans. Again, the human rights groups came to Bomas and they gave us data on excesses that we saw from our own police officers. You are the ones who reported to us that when we went bailing the young who had died out of police brutality, the IG then called and said that we have actually opened a new line of investment, hiring caskets and dead bodies. Remarks that he has still not withdrawn. And these are not very useful indicators of an agency that we want to depend on. I must say that the performance of IG during those times, and also Bugei, who is the one in charge of Nairobi, made us think again, we still didn't we fix these manenos of police officers and their approach to issues. But on the whole, it's good to say that the country holds together because of the security agencies, and we must continue thanking those who have remained faithful to that calling. And again, say, like when we complain about the cost of living, they are hardest hit, and the details can be brought to the table during another time. This issue of Haiti, we cannot look at it and fail to talk about the brutality or the insecurity that we are seeing in Lamu. of communities being almost ejected. Northeastern is yet another case. We saw these issues at Sodu. And now what my colleague was saying, that it was again reported by yourselves that the theft of phones within the street has again come back. How they are unable to unlock and make the gadget useful to somebody else is still another innovation. And so these are issues that must be addressed by those in the system right now. On the issue of Haiti, my biggest take is this. One, I am not sure that we are doing the correct thing. Haiti is a very, very dangerous ground to send 1,000 of our young people. And two is that we seem to have overpromised yet again. I don't know why we wanted to be the highest givers or the donators of police officers to Haiti. Perhaps looking for international legitimacy that may not have been easily obtained locally. But the most important thing is, when we want to engage in this kind of activities, it is important that we follow the due process. Parliament must give approval. In my opinion, it was not right for us to have given those promises without engaging the institution. Now it is happening. If then the process goes all the way to the end, a decision will have to be made by, and that choice must be left to the police officers. They should not be coerced to go. Let them make the choice, because Haiti is definitely a more dangerous environment than Kenya. We are likely to lose our sons, our husbands during that thing. People must be allowed to decide on their own account. I want to go. All the other issues have been said, but my final thing on Haiti is that it's not a good thing for us. Yes. So you don't think that is... I don't think it's a good decision that we made at that level. Without doubt, it's good to be seen to be helping at the international level, but other countries, yes, but Haiti is not even a country we know of a system, language barriers, the distance between here and there, many things that... gangs, people who are, I don't know.
You wouldn't know.
All right. Anybody consulting me as a police officer, I will tell him don't.
Okay. All right. I want us to take our short break, and then when we come back, we'll wind up on some of the other issues remaining that we expect to hear from the president this afternoon as well. The hashtag, as always, is AM Live and TV. Stay with us.
So fresh, fresh, fresh. Fresh all day. Always fresh. Nivea Fresh Deo. Now with new InfiniFresh technology. Antibacterial power with 48-hour protection and long-lasting freshness. Nivea Fresh Deo. Feel fresh in every moment. Try new Nivea Fresh Sensation Deo. Our freshest fragrance with 72-hour antiperspirant protection.
Kila unapotia bidii maishani, lengo lako ni kuhakikisha mapato ya kesho yako yanalindwa. Habari yako mama, wewe weka pesa zako wapi?
Mimi naweka pesa zangu kwa hii mkebe.
Ai mama, sidhani hiyo mkebe iko safe. Wacha tukuulize Wakenya wengine. Je, wewe weka pesa zako wapi? Mimi? Yes. Wewe. Tutoke hapa. Shiro, wewe weka pesa zako wapi?
Sio hizi pesa zangu.
Wakenya, msiogope kuhifadhi pesa zenyu kwenye benki. Pesa zenyu zitakuwa safe. Shirika la KDIC, Kenya Deposit Insurance Corporation, lina jukumu la kulinda pesa zako kwenye benki. Weka pesa zako kwenye benki leo.
KDIC, protecting your deposit.
Want to know the biggest story of the week? Do not worry. The Weekly Review got you covered. For in-depth analysis of politics, business, governance, as well as social issues, the Weekly Review covers it all. For well-researched, exclusive and investigative content, read the Weekly Review every Sunday in the Sunday Nation.
This is about the strategic imperative and the strategic importance of Africa telling her own stories. We need to look at the narrative and what people say about Africa as a strategic imperative that we really need to get hold of and tell our own stories. 60 years down the line, today we have the capacity to be able to have a media platform that can actually tell the stories in our own words, in our own ways, and therefore to tell the correct picture about Africa today.
Na wewe unaitwa aje?
Mimi naitwa Shiro.
Shiro, wewe weka pesa zako wapi?
Pesa zangu naekanga hapa ndani. Sio hizi pesa zangu.
Makubwa haya. Kenya Deposit Insurance Corporation lina jukumu la
All right, welcome back to the program as we wind up on our last stretch of the conversation. Let's for this bit as we'll be handing over to the rest of our colleagues who are now stationed at Parliament buildings, of course, where President William Ruto is expected to be heading there in the afternoon to give his maiden State of the Nation address. And interestingly, in the Daily Nation, just quickly, it talks about Kenyans will also wait to see if President Ruto will extend an olive branch to the opposition, even as his deputy Rigathi Gachagua insists the Kenya Kwanza government is like a company with shareholders, with those who voted for it being given priority. But that speaks on the issue of, national unity as well. We're looking at very important issues of Article 10, national values, principles, to look at who and where we are along certain dimensions. So patriotism, national unity, sharing and evolution of power, the rule of law, democracy and participation of the people. Bwana Isaac Ruto, the democratic space in the country ever since the election, have we been able to achieve perhaps a better score on that particular matter?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think Kenya seems to be learning continuously. Mm-hmm. Yeah, including learning that once elections are over,
right,
the person elected is the president of everyone, and the government belongs to everybody, and the country remains one. So there cannot be shareholders of a country. Mm-hmm. There cannot be shareholders of a government. Those who have been elected have been given a service to deliver. They promise they can do better. Mm-hmm. Kenyans have given them an opportunity to so do. It is the onus is on them mm-hmm. to deliver to all the Kenyans. And I think it is the wrong rhetoric to talk mm-hmm. about shareholding in a country. Mm-hmm. I think that is a little bit of a careless statement, mm-hmm. which ought to disappear really. Mm-hmm. I think it is not a serious statement. Mm-hmm. Kenya belongs to all of us, and those who didn't even vote for the government are subjects to that government, and they pay tax and they expect services from that government. Mm-hmm. And they are also doing their duty. Their duty is to criticize, to show mistakes, and therefore hold the government to account. And that's what democracy is all about. Democracy is about holding elections mm-hmm. and holding people to account, and there being someone to tell you you may not be doing it right, and telling the voter that I can do better. Mm-hmm. But he must allow the sitting government to deliver, should not block. Mm-hmm. My friend had mentioned about the question of police dispersing mandamanos. Mm. I think people are allowed to picket, and they are allowed to hold rallies or meetings, even demonstrate, but it should be orderly, it should not be chaotic, and it should not block me from doing my duty also. Mm. I want to go to the shop, and I know should stop me because he's picketing. I think we can set aside areas for picketing. Yeah. We can say, since, for example, Jamhuri Park is available full-time except when we have the showground, we can say you can hold rallies there, as much as you can. Call anybody, whatever you want to do. Like they have Hyde Park in the UK. You can go and say whatever you want there. But don't block the streets. The problem is when you block the streets, then the police get confused. They want to open the streets and they want to allow you to continue picketing. But then you continue picketing every day. So what happens? The economy grinds to a halt? Or what do we do?
So what does that speak to our own level of the democratic space that we hold in the country, where you have one side who want to picket, right? And then the police have also been accused of gross violations of humanitarian aspects of the law, you know, with some of the things. We have the Kenya Human Rights Commission, Amnesty. So where does that speak?
There is a problem there because it's a thin line. When police feel threatened with rocks of stone, they are forced to defend themselves, quote unquote, from reasonable threats, and they must be seen to be in charge. So there are those issues, but nevertheless, sometimes they go into excesses. But then both sides are to blame. I think we need to have a conversation and agree that whenever we want to picket, what do? We now need to define. I think they are, I don't know, Bwana Kioni, whether we came up with a law to manage this, because people should be free to do it. That's true. But you see, your freedom ends where mine starts. You see, you have got a free, you are free to swing your hands, but please do it a little bit further from me.
As long as you don't extend yours to mine.
So what do? We have got to understand how to manage our freedoms, and these freedoms should not then stop children from going to school. These freedoms should not stop us taking our mothers to maternity, or our young girls.
So it should be confined to a set structure of the law.
Yeah, a set structure of the law, so that we know. Okay, you want to do picketing? We had mentioned in some law that look, you notify the police adequate time. But if you just notify, you know, I think we just said notify, but I thought there ought to have been agreement also on the venues. Really, well, the venue I've got to mention, but when you say you are going along the road, there are demonstrations that are led by the police, like the ones heart-to-heart walk, those who are running. The police will say these roads are blocked on this day, and they are given either a Saturday or a Sunday with less activity. But these ones, when you fix it for continuous days, then there is something else you are trying to hurt.
And now that
is the economy.
And now that we don't want to find ourselves in this situation once again, where we find ourselves is we're having a conversation, what is called as a national dialogue conversation. It's happening at the Bomas of Kenya. I think they've retreated 30 more days to compile a report.
The retreat happens from this afternoon.
Right. So yes, so this is where we are. Do you have confidence that as a country, by having this conversation, we will be able to fully solve the situations that got us in the first place to the streets?
I'll want them to bring appropriate legislation, and we should be willing to implement. And we should be willing to pass whatever legislation come out of that area in a bipartisan manner. This country belongs to all of us. And we are in this party today, tomorrow we are in another party, the another day we are in another party. An example is, of course, both myself and Kioni. We have been in different parties for a long time. And that should be freedom, that should be allowed. And nevertheless, you should also be free to say, I don't like this, and you say it loudly. Like you were saying when we were pushing for the new constitution, even Kibaki unleashed dogs on us. It really chased us. That was the first time we were seeing dogs chasing us in Andaman. And some of us were bitten by the dogs. I even broke my leg.
Oh no!
No, it was a serious thing. I mean, getting 2010 constitution, this Madamano you saw here was... I think that time I was in government, I was really unleashing the dogs.
Yes, he was unleashing the dogs.
And now you're sitting together.
Eventually, we came up with a provision that picketing is a right.
Is a right.
And it must be provided for in the constitution, like I said before. And what he is saying is correct. We even said that the police officers should escort picketers. And it happened once or twice. What we don't have again in the constitution is restricting us to Jamhuri. That side, you can see his choice of Jamhuri. He's thinking that the people demonstrating are only from Kibla.
If the majority are from that side, they can stay there.
You know that
the others in Kasarani can stay in Kasarani.
That is the the effects of having stayed away from Nairobi for too long.
But anyway,
we did know that there are more serious demonstrators in places like Mukuru Kwajenga, or places where you go and women come with water to help you deal with the tear gas.
The tear gas.
I agree that the issue of stones and the rest, but there is nowhere you can justify a person holding a sufuria. You know, I came up with the issues of sufuria in this madamano was to soften, to let the police know that we are not out to harm them. But a person is holding a sufuria and you are, what you have in your hand is a gun with snipers. The bullets that were hit, all those people who died had gunshot through the head, the heart, and the private parts. Snipers. It was the most brutal way of handling demonstrator that we have ever had. Even during those very tough days. That can never be allowed to pass.
Okay.
It was a little loss on our democratic space. We have gained, and I can tell you demonstrations are not bad. Without doubt, damaging property is the thing that must be condemned.
Yes.
But also, what we saw is that you could not actually tell whether it was the demonstrators damaging property or police officers. Because again, what you never do when you come into that kind of a space as a police officer, you can never come in private clothes. And you can never come armed with a gun. When somebody sees you armed with a gun and you are a private officer, all of a sudden I thought I was next to my colleague demonstrative fella, and the guy produces handcuffs, produces a gun, then the whole thing becomes chaotic. We would not have gotten to where we got if police officers had behaved well.
All right. And
you
so
cannot
it led us
restrict us to a specific area. You want to come to Parliament and tell them what you are doing on the floor, this finance bill is bad. That must be allowed. That's why you cannot come up with a law to say Kasarani or whatever. It doesn't allow us into that democratic space that is
which pushed everyone to where we see right now the National Dialogue Committee taking place, and that conversation now moving to that direction.
Yes,
So,
and I tell you,
and you had less confidence in what is happening at the Bomas of Kenya. Has that changed for you?
Not quite, but I can tell you one of the things that is amazing that we are saying even today. One of the things that settling these things forever, always have the servers open. Ever. The law says the voting process must be simple, verifiable, and you must be able to, it must be transparent. Just open the servers. Even today, open them. I lost. I want to see how I lost so that I can prepare for the next time. Why are you worried about opening the servers? That simple thing, and it is now dawning of even those people who are ardent opposers to the whole thing, just open the servers. I got 5 votes or I did not deliver anything to Raila, like people would say. Yes, I didn't deliver. Open the servers. There are those idiots who were saying before that I never voted for Musalia. Open the servers. Why leave it as a shrouded thing? Is that simple.
Okay.
And I want to tell you that you cannot fail to see the double handling of the demonstration. See what happens in Nairobi. But when demonstrators were demonstrating in Eldoret because of the tuition that Mandago is supposed to answer to, where money was taken from parents for people to go and get educated abroad, demonstrations were peaceful. But the whole Eldoret was out. So you cannot fail to blame the police and the powers that be for having those double standard approach. And you can actually see how far this democratic space has grown. We have now the issues of the kingpins and pin kings. You know, these are things that are just going to die away because they make no relevance to our cost of living.
All right. And actually, you know, before you leave, I mean, so you know, you are heading this Kamwene Leadership Forum. Is it Kamwene Leadership Forum?
Yes, Kamwene, yes.
And Azimio. Isn't this also part of kingmanship or supremacy battles within Mount Kenya?
It's a political forum where leaders would come and talk about issues from all the parties, where they'll come and talk about issues that face the community, so that when you go back to your party, you are able to articulate the same. Something that has been done very well by people from the Somali community. They are in every party, but they meet somewhere in the evening, and they are able to say, when you go to ODM, push for this. When you go to Jubilee, push for this. So the push from that region is the same. It is something that we must emulate as others and know how to bring ourselves together. These difficult economic times, those who are next to one another must be able to pull things together. Just like people are saying, wacha tutumie gari yako kesho. Hii gharama ya mafuta imetuletea shida.
But why Mount Kenya region? I thought as has a national outlook.
We are actually just late.
Looking at the interests of every single person.
We are only late in doing this. When the Ruyas meet, nobody releases a qualm. We are actually the last ones to do this. So allow us also to experience what you have experienced before and see whether we can catch up with the ground that we have already lost.
Is it not likely to be retrogressive? I thought we were moving away from the kingmanship and the pin kings.
By the way, it is also, unfortunately, it could also be an indicator of lack of faith in the unitary thing that you have. You feel like, we are not getting, we are not moving on. There's something that is not happening. In our biasharas as people from Mount Kenya, most of the businesses have gone under. You need to ask yourself why. We had very strong merry-go-round groups, and they have all collapsed overnight, just like the cooperative movements collapsed when we got the KANU regime back in 1979. Now the merry-go-rounds in Mount Kenya have all collapsed. We need to ask ourselves how, why. It is not an issue of Jubilee or those in other forums. It's an issue for the leadership in that area. And we are offering that as a forum where people can come and say that, the rest and that. They even discuss this thing of kingpin and this is nonsense. And don't drag Uhuru into those things. Uhuru's mind is not that low. He is thinking of bigger things. So
Kamane is not a breakaway faction of Azimio?
No.
That perhaps has a different political agenda?
Bad news for those who ever thought that it would help them break up Azimio. Bad news is going to strengthen Azimio. It will strengthen other units where people will have come from.
Okay.
Yes.
All right. Final thoughts, Mheshimiwa Isaac Ruto. So in a couple of hours, wait, about 9, 10, 11, 12. So in about 5 hours, we'll be hearing from the president on some of the issues we've been able to touch on. Just final thoughts on perhaps what Kenyans should also be looking forward to?
Yeah, I think Kenyans should be looking forward to understanding that these are temporary periods in any country. And they are never meant to be permanent. And they will have to understand that we are living in a globe where what is happening in your neighbor's place will touch on you. And the young people understand it better because they are now in touch world over. And I'm sure they know what's happening. We've got enough news now. We no longer wait until you print your papers. We are already reading it in the alternative systems available. The internet is quite available,
right?
And I don't think one would want to pin the rising prices of oil on any particular policy of a government. And although maybe Moses Kuria didn't put it very in good language, the truth is we don't have oil. I don't know what happened to the ones in Turkana. Somebody should be telling us.
You should tell us when you saw the houses they were putting.
Yeah, we should be told whether we are about to go back there. Maybe that would be a solution, or maybe it is not economical.
And also unsustainable in a world where we're moving towards climate change.
Moving towards climate change. We've seen other countries, they have adopted the different vehicles. We see them using electric cars very well, moving equally well. The whole day, 500 kilometers covered by one charging. And I think we ought to now realize that we've got to move in that direction, because climate change is a very serious issue. The global warming is a serious existential threat.
I think it's actually going to be featuring very highly on the president's speech.
I don't think...
Monday we've been given, is it tree growing day?
Yeah.
National tree growing, so it's a public
holiday. We just have to address that question as a matter of life and death. We only have 50 years to sort out this problem. And 50 years come and go like I don't know what. and then we'll be in a worse situation. If the climate changes, I mean, if the temperatures rise by more than 1 or 1.5 degrees
Celsius,
yeah, we are going in the wrong direction.
Right.
Absolutely.
All right. Final thoughts, Mheshimiwa Kioni?
I don't know whether Monday is it a day of growing trees or planting trees.
It was actually
but
tree growing day.
Whatever it is, I agree it is important to plant trees. But also when you want to cut them, maybe give us a day. You can't involve in the whole country planting and only a few people cutting trees within 2-3 months. All trees in the countries are gone until we have to get a holiday to plant. Inua Jamii programs, bring it back, fund it better. Leader Mama, hiyo najua unaelewa zaidi. Leader Mama programs, it was helping us and know that no lady was going to go through the difficulties he was talking about when delivering or doing that exercise. And so much kazi kwa mitaani. These programs that take money to people at the grassroots level so that their economic activities. Free education, primary to university, is the minimum that we can get. And like I said, you have to be very careful because January could be very different in this country. You are talking of demonstration ya sufuria. If people demonstrate because of school fees, you will not be able to handle that crisis in this country. Bring it back at whatever cost. Electricity, subsidize. Fuel, subsidize. Bring it down. You are not going to spur the economy.
The president is very clear on the issue of subsidies, especially consumption subsidy. It has failed. Right?
1 year down the line, what can you say we have succeeded in doing? 300 shillings per litre, and you tell us we will be growing any economy in this country? Honestly, something must be done.
Yeah, but
and I know, and it is doable because we have looked at this. There are 9 levies that have been introduced. 80 shillings is tax. And I agree we must levy tax for us to grow. But the areas that we are taxing are the areas that will actually stagnate us more.
Yes, Mheshimiwa.
Yeah, I think that's it. The only thing I wanted to mention was that someone should have taken over the question of the program of Beyond Zero. Seem to have forgotten about that particular address because there are still mothers dying while giving birth.
So maternal health care.
Maternal health care has to be put on real top priority. And I think the Ministry of Health should really have continued, and the counties should have continued, pick it from there.
All right.
Because those vehicles, I have found them packed. Most of the counties, they have packed them, and we had them. All and there are those that still need those services in the far-flung areas. Those are some of the key issues that
perhaps you would want to hear from the president?
No, I don't think that is really an issue you may want to address. I think that's an issue for the counties and the others at the local level to address. But the president's issue is to tell Kenyans the whole truth and nothing but the truth, and let them know how these difficult times will come to an end.
Including waking up tomorrow and closing some of the parastatals. It is the biggest drain to the exchequer. And it was as old as we were in Parliament. There are some of these parastatals that don't make any sense at all. And they consume a lot from the exchequer.
And isn't that why there was a conversation on privatization?
All those things have been there for in the past governments and this regime. Just wake up tomorrow and funga. Let us deal with the consequences.
Privatize or funga?
Funga.
Some of them are doing functions that belong to counties.
Right. All right. Thank you so much. I think we're going to wind up on that note. Isaac Ruto, former Bomet governor, also the former chair of the Council of Governors and now a member of the Judicial Service Commission. Thank you so much for making time for us this morning. Jeremiah Kioni, Secretary General, Jubilee Party, and actually we'll be heading for a meeting for the National Dialogue Committee happening today.
We are there at 9 o'clock.
9 o'clock.
Top of the agenda, multi-party democracy.
All right. Fidelity to the political party.
The cost of living.
All right. Thank you so much, gentlemen, for coming in this morning. This is our wall-to-wall coverage of this State of the Nation address by President William Ruto, his maiden address before a joint sitting of Parliament today at 2:30 p.m. We're going to be giving you an all coverage of the same. We have Olive Barrows and Lofty Matambo who will be joining us in just a short while from Parliament buildings. We also have Nina Shaban, we have Lois Wangoe, Bridget Singana, Fatma Bogu, Zakias Mosame, Nuru Abdulaziz, Margaret Kimathi, Martin Moura, Bernardo Juang. All those are from the counties, but Nuru Abdulaziz will be here in Nairobi. Nina Shaban will be taking a look at businesses here in the CBD, and also Ibrahim Karanja as well as Duncan Kaemba, our senior political reporters, will also be giving us an idea of what we expect this morning. But we're going to take a short break. Remember to stay with us for this wall-to-wall coverage. My name is Zainab Ismail. The hashtag State of the Nation Address NTV, AM Live NTV, at NTV Kenya, at Zainab Ismail. Stay with us.